If we could now do more of a deep dive into the topic of submitting to agents and publishers, and I guess this is the segment where we're talking through the process, what works, maybe touching on your experiences, successes, setbacks, disappointments, what's worked, what hasn't, your learnings, and advice that you can share with other writers. So if I can start with a more of a broad question about what have been generally, before we get into the nuts and bolts of how to complete a submission, what have been your experiences in terms of, I'm sure like all of us, you've had setbacks, you've had rejections, you've had some successes, and you've learned some things along the way. So can you share those experiences?
Yeah, look, I had in the early days submitted to so many publishers, so many agents. I could literally like this nice blank wall behind me could be wallpapered with my rejections. And I think that's a pretty normal experience for any writer, really. It's just something that we go through. And uh, that can be really disheartening. It requires a lot of determination and persistence and belief in yourself to just continue putting yourself through the agony of doing that again and again and again. And that was one of the reasons I did go indie, was just to have a rest from that. If I felt a book was good enough and I felt like it was a great book, I wanted it out there. I didn't want it just sitting there on my computer. So I have done a lot of that. Then I had a long, long rest from that. And I guess it's only been now recently that I've gone down that path again. I wanted an agent rather than approaching publishers directly, um, to hopefully spare myself a little bit of that heartbreak. But I know it still comes anyway. Getting an agent is just as hard as getting a publisher, if not harder. It's a difficult process, and it's hard to be seen, and it's hard to, you can have the best book in the world and the best cover letter in the world, but if you've hit that publisher or agent at the wrong time, it's never going to go anywhere, no matter how good your book is. So there's a bit of luck in it as well. So it's one of those experiences that you've just got to keep trying and keep improving
And
and
so you
hope
did
that one day.
eventually find an agent. So you did have that success in the end.
Yes, I'm so happy to be able to say yes to that. Yeah, it's taken a long time, and I think in the end it's come down to the cover letter that I put together for this agent. I had so many things on what I call my author CV that I made myself almost too hard to say no to. I mean, there's a bit just while I was being rejected all through those years, I was entering competitions and had those successes. I was selling a lot of books as an indie. I was building up those kinds of achievements and being, which resulted in me being able to put myself forward with all of these things that I could list out that I had done, that made, I suppose, an agent sit back and actually take notice. And that was
Mm.
great.
And that's before we get into the nuts and bolts again, my question around, as you said, you're starting to build up your CV to
Yep.
make yourself more attractive to publishers. And I guess we actually had a podcast interview with another guest last night, and we were talking around issues that, as we saw in the traditional publishing industry, around, is it the case that the best manuscripts are getting through, or are there other reasons why certain manuscripts are being selected for publication, given the difficulties it is to be identified, and is it just the fact that it's a great manuscript? Clearly, the more you can add to your repertoire in terms of your CV and success, you start to. It might be the case that where the agents are just blindly going through submission after submission, and they're just starting to, their eyes are glazing over. Maybe they're not even looking that hard at the manuscripts, but they suddenly see one where you got this person with all these achievements. They might actually stop and take the time to notice you. Would that be a fair comment, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, there's always the exceptions to the rules, and there could be an author that's written something absolutely brilliant and doesn't have much on their CV, and that gets through and gets noticed. But I really think you can increase your chances of success by having not just that great book, but also the great CV. And I think if you can have both of those in place, then your chances increase by quite a lot. So, um, an agent or even a publisher, it's so competitive and so hard for them to sell a book these days. And it's getting harder and harder because they're competing with the indies now as well. So they want to know that you, as an author, that you are going to be able to do some of their work for them, that you know how to market yourself, that you're comfortable on social media, that you know how to sell a book, because that's going to make their job easier. So if they've got a big pile of manuscripts and they've got two of them that are great, and one of them's by an author who hasn't proven themselves yet, and one's by an author who has all these runs on the board, it's pretty obvious which one they're going to champion. So
Mm.
you can really improve your chances, I believe, by having those achievements and having your CV full of, or your cover letter full of reasons that they want to look at you.
Okay, so let's delve into that further. There's three key areas that you're going to talk us through. We started to
Yeah.
touch on a few of those. The three being having a great book, the second one having a great CV, and third a certain amount of luck, and how the three tie in together. So the first one, having a great book. What's defined as a great book?
Yeah, well, that's it's pretty subjective, isn't it? So,
That's the
but
million dollar question, really, isn't it?
well, look, what I mean by that is that you don't want to submit a book that's either not finished or it's not your best work. Always submit your absolute best work. Have it edited, have it proofread, show it to beta readers, have everybody like looking, like make sure you've read it a million times, put your best foot forward. So I met an author recently at a conference. It was her first book she was writing, and she was pitching it to an agent. And she said to me, I'm really hoping to get a deal with this agent because it will give me the motivation I need to finish writing my book. And I thought, oh, and she was so lovely. And I really hope that she's successful, but I just thought, goodness, an agent's not going to be there to motivate you to finish your book. They want that finished piece. They want something polished. They want something that they can see you've put your heart and soul in. So for a great book, it's really just have it finished. Don't, a lot of people fall for that temptation. Oh, I'll submit the first three chapters, and if they ask for more, I'll quickly write it then. That could be a trap. And that happens all the time. People do that all the time. So
Wow.
so reading in your genre, it's like knowing what you need to be doing and actually, doing your best to nail it and have an absolutely like the best book that you can actually write, and that's what you should be submitting. But yeah, it's subjective, of course.
We've talked previously around trying to intentionally anticipate what agents might be looking for in terms of industry trends and so on. But everyone we've spoken to, the consensus always says, look, don't try and predict trends because trends change. Just write what's in your heart. Write what you want to write because ultimately that will be a better story. What are your thoughts? You're thinking maybe you do need to look at trends. What do you have a different opinion?
I think I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I don't think there's any point writing what's in your heart if it's not selling and no one wants to read it. You may as well write a diary and put it under your bed. So sorry to sound.
Fair, no, fair enough.
I think that you've got to pay attention to trends. You've got to look at what's selling. You've got to look at what they want, but it has to be genuine as well. So it's about the key is to find that thing that's selling and that agents and publishers want, but that also excites you and that's also something you're interested in writing. So I just kind of feel like you need both of those things in play.
It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want to be picking you don't want to start writing about vampires simply because they're selling at that
Yeah.
particular time. If you have absolutely no interest in them and it bores you senseless because you're not going to finish the book.
Yeah,
Um,
and there'll always be something missing. So when I started writing, I thought, oh, I'm going to write a romance, but it's going to be really easy. These things are dead easy to write, these category romances. And I was terrible at it because I don't like reading them. So it's not something I would want to, and I think, they were probably decent enough manuscripts, but the reason they never got any attention was because they were missing that X factor, because I think anyone reading it could tell that my heart was not in that story. So
And was that a business decision when you wrote that? Was it more about anticipating I want to write something that might give me a little bit more leverage or a better chance of getting published, or was it because you wanted to just try something new? What was the reasoning behind writing something that you weren't overly comfortable with?
think I was just naive, and I just knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know where to start. When you've never written a book, it's kind of overwhelming, that thought of, well, that's a lot of words, that's a lot of work, and where do I start and how do I do it and am I good enough and all the rest of it. So I suppose I just thought, oh, this will be easy and an easy way to get started, and it was the complete opposite. So that lesson was learnt the hard way.
So, in terms of the first point, having a great book, it's about putting your best
Yeah,
foot forward. Be patient enough to make sure that you haven't typed the end and then start submitting, going back and spending the time to polish it so that you can be as happy with it as possible. That's, in terms of, as we said, it is subjective in terms of what is a good book, but as long as you can be happy that it's now ready. Sometimes we can be guilty of being so excited and so desperate to get it out that it's a bit
yeah.
undercooked and we can rush into it. So would that be the best way to kind of sum up the first point, is make sure that that book is as good as it possibly can be?
Absolutely. And don't be precious over it. If you've given it to people to read and they've got comments, you don't have to take all of their comments on board by any means. You're the boss of your book, but listen to what's being said. And if something makes sense and it's a valid point, don't be precious about it. Take the advice on board and make your book even stronger.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you received feedback from agents which has helped you do better submissions later?
Not really. I mean, most of the rejections I've had over the years have been pretty form rejections. There's not a lot of them that actually give you a whole lot of detail. I mean, there've been some exceptions to that. The rejections where they say all these lovely things, but we don't have room on our list, that kind of thing. So, I mean, they're nice and they're motivating, but nothing really that's been like super useful in terms of, great, that's a great point, I'm going to put that into the book. So they're a bit pressed for time, I think, to be able to give that individualized feedback to people on all submissions.
Mm. Well, I mean, just in terms of numbers, this year, for example, I spent most of this year pitching a new manuscript, and I thought I'd give it a crack. And I went to about 30 agents based in the UK, America, and Australia. And I think I haven't actually done the sums, but I would probably think I've had about um, 10 replies, which were just generic receptions. Thank you, but it's not for us at this time. Good luck for your future endeavors. And the rest of them are just, if you haven't heard from us in 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
assume that's rejection. So that's been my experience. Out of 30, probably a third of them I got even just a response. And only one of them got back to me saying, I started reading it, but it just didn't work for me. And I said, "Oh, thank you so much, but is there any way you could elaborate?" And he got back to me. It was quite abrupt and just said, "As I
No.
said, it didn't work for me. Thanks very much. Doesn't help me a lot, but thanks for the feedback."
That's really frustrating. Yeah, but good
I
on
d-
you for asking, because you had nothing to lose by asking,
Well,
did
he
you?
sent me 2 emails saying the same thing. He could have just sent me one email with a little bit more detail, and it would have been more helpful for both of us. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I submitted to, I submitted to Dead Regular, my first novel, to Curtis Brown in the UK, and I actually got a reply from the agent who effectively, yeah, said he wasn't interested in publishing. However, he gave me a full page sort
Wow.
of where it needs to be changed. And I think I remember the last thing, one of the things, and of course you're going to change the title, and then it's like. I don't know. Immediate response was, "What was wrong with the title?" And then after a few days, you just like go, "Perhaps I'll change the titles." But it
That's a
was,
huge compliment, though. It shows that you wrote a really good book. To get that sort of feedback is
yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Well,
that's
it made a massive change to this because that literally that advice because it one of the things was he said it felt as if it was another day in a paramedic's life and there were too many scenes in there that didn't push the main story forward, and so that's why I cut about 5 chapters out. And then that's how I came about writing my short stories. I converted those into short stories and submit, and then published
yeah.
those as short stories. So that sort of one letter from one agent who was a rejection actually spawned so much more and made my book so much better.
That's brilliant. That's what I was trying to sort of say before. If you get given ideas and feedback and they resonate with you, run with them, because
Yeah,
often
yeah.
it's the best advice you can get. So yeah, that's terrific.
so Heidi, let's move on to the second point about having a great author CV.
Yes.
You spoke before about probably for you over time your CV became better because in the interim you started getting successes with awards and publication and marketing and developing a fan base. So that kind of makes sense that your CV is looking better over time. But as you say, there might also be a brand new author that hasn't yet built up those runs on the board just yet. So if we look at, I guess it's like applying for a job, a resume, a CV, a job application. It's very similar. What are the core basics of a good author CV?
Well, I think you've got to look at really what have you got that you can mention that might interest an agent, say, for example. So in my case, I've got a marketing degree and I've taught public relations at a university. So those are two things that aren't really authory as such, but they're relevant. So, and I know, so I put that in my cover letter as well because it shows I know about marketing and I can talk to people, I suppose. So think about what you've got. You might have some sort of work experience that you think, but that's not book related, but it might still be relevant to your career as an author. Other things would be if you don't have awards and prizes for writing competitions, start getting them, start entering.
Start entering.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of competitions and a lot of them are for short stories. So get out there and start getting those runs on the board instead of so start building up that aspect of your author CV. If you are an indie author or if you've got a book out there, start trying to get more reviews, get more eyes on your books, more sales, because those are things certainly that I quoted in my cover letter to the agent were my sales, were how many reviews I'd had, all those kinds of things. So start trying to build up on that. I even in my cover letter quoted my favorite ever rejection from a publisher who said all these lovely things about the book, but couldn't publish it. And I actually was cheeky enough to say, this person from this publisher said this about, my previous work. So, you can start some of those rejections you might be able to use for good instead of evil.
Quote.
So there are things you can do. I mean, I know one of the frustrations I had when I started out, I was like, oh, it's all who you know. Everyone knows people. I don't know anyone. Well, don't waste your time complaining that you don't know anyone. Start knowing people. Get out there to events, go to conferences, go to author talks, talk to people online, join Facebook groups. You put your energy into actually fixing up that part of where you're falling down rather than complaining about it, I suppose. So it's all those things of going out, getting yourself out there as much as you possibly can and entering your work in competitions and getting eyes on your work is all going to help you pull together that CV and that cover letter, I suppose, is really what it comes down to when you're submitting.
And my experiences has been both traditional publishers, say in Australia, where they do accept submissions without an agent, but certainly if you look at agents, it's all very similar, but they all have their specific requirements. You can't just have one submission ready to go and bang it out to 30 agents because I'll guarantee some will want a 300 word synopsis, some will want a 500, some will want a one page but don't specify word count. And they'll have a submission form where you send it through by email, or they want the first three chapters. So their requirements are all different. So you have to, if you're pitching to 30 different agents, you're probably going to have to do roughly 30 different types of submissions. Some time ago, I did a 6-week course through Curta Brand Creative. It was a promoting and pitch your manuscript. So it was about pitching and how to write a submission letter. And there was kind of like a formula. Paragraph 1, this is the information you include. This is how you would write paragraph 2. You've only got one page, so you need to be very careful about how you word it, and it needs to be appealing. But there was a really set scientific formula around how to construct this letter. Is that something you have adhered to? Maybe if we look at when you did secure your agent, was anything different that you did that you
Well,
think made it stand out?
their requirements were really specific. So they had in your letter, we want to know, and it was a long list of stuff. So I just tackled that list and did the submission exactly how they asked for it. So everything to the, like I covered everything they wanted. they wanted chapter outlines, I believe, like everything they wanted, I did exactly as they had asked for. So it turned out to be 2 pages, but they never said it had to only be one. But I just literally could not fit. By the time I had answered all their questions about me, I hadn't even got to what my book was about. So I broke the letter down into essentially 2 parts, an about me part and a about my manuscript part. And it did take the best part of 2 pages, but it was a case of wording it the most important and impressive stuff up first. So leading with that, I worked my indie sales in right in the first sentence because I knew that was my strong point. So leading with what is going to impress and just working through exactly their requirements and what they had asked for. So very much a tailored letter, and if that submission hadn't worked, I wouldn't necessarily, just like you said, I wouldn't have been able to pick that up and just use it for another agent, because it would have had all sorts of stuff they didn't want to know, or maybe didn't have stuff they did want to know. Yeah, so I had all of that stuff I mentioned before. I had how many followers on social media, all that kind of stuff they had asked for. So it was really just a case of breaking it into paragraphs and tackling them one by one.
And
But
was it
certainly
a
I was
sorry?
just going to say that letter would have looked quite different 15 years ago to now. So it's just working on those things as you go to make it stronger and stronger each submission.
And for that manuscript that you did get accepted by an agent, was that one that you had pitched to other agents and been rejected, and then you changed it, or had you written something new and started pitching again, and you were able to get it to a point that early on it was a lot better than your previous submissions, for example?
Was actually I had never submitted it to anyone. No, that's the only agent I submitted it to, and I hadn't submitted it to any publishers. So I was extremely fortunate in that regard. That doesn't mean that I hadn't written other domestic suspense manuscripts that got widely rejected, but this particular one, which I felt was my best work, managed to catch the agent on that first submission. So that was exceptionally, I'll use the word lucky, but it wasn't really lucky, was it? There's a lot of work went into that luck. So it worked out. I did though have a lot of people read it before I submitted, and a lot of my friends who are authors read it as well. I had some really constructive feedback on it, and I reworked that manuscript a lot of times significantly. It wasn't just change this word, it was taking out full chapters, changing this. It's a book about mothers, and so I had some male points of view, and I had 2 of my beta readers that said to me, take the male point of view out and just leave this as female point of view for this particular book. And I listened to that, and I had to just take out chapters. I was ruthless with it. So by the time I submitted it, it was a really robust manuscript. It had very few typos, not that would have make or break the deal, but it was really solid when I submitted it. I felt anyway, it felt like I was submitting something that was really strong.
And I guess because with the submission, you only provide a sample. You might only provide they might only ask you for the first couple of chapters. So it sounds like that with this particular manuscript, it was strong in the concept, the synopsis and the initial elevator pitch of this is what this book's about. And sounds like that must have really captured their eye. Obviously, they would have read the sample and then got you to submit more work, and they were happy that it was well written. But it's also about catching their eye in terms of the concept. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I did probably one, I don't know if it was a cheeky thing or not, but they had asked for 3 to 4 chapters, but they never said they had to be the first 3 to 4. So I actually submitted 4 chapters right through the book. And then it would I'd say this is, just one chapter that showed that I could write humor, one chapter that showed that I could write drama, high stakes, one that could show relationships and intimacy. So I picked out different chapters that showed off different types of my writing rather than just the first 3 chapters. So I don't know if that helped or not, but and they never said it had to be the first 3 chapters. So
yeah, some of them do.
That's
Yeah,
really interesting because there's always seems to be this emphasis on get those first 3 or 4 sample chapters. You know, the focus is that they want to see how the book starts and can you hook the reader early.
yeah.
So that's interesting that you're able to submit various chapters.
Well, like I say, they never said not to. I did include, I think I had the very first chapter. Anyway, I would have to check now. But yeah, I definitely kind of pushed that rule a little bit because I wanted to show different types of writing. So, um, yeah, I think that ended up working out well.
Can you give any tips about the synopsis? That's part of the submission. The submission usually is a cover letter where you talk about yourself and your credentials.
Yeah.
It'll be a sample, first couple of chapters or all chapters, and the synopsis. And I know there's Queensland Writers Centre, all the writer centres. There are a lot of workshops you can do to write a better synopsis. I think and again, the requirements will be some will ask you to write a 300 word synopsis, and that's bloody hard for an 80,000 word
You can't.
manuscript.
You actually can't.
Others might say you
That's a
can,
blurb. You can't
yeah.
synopsis in 300.
My experience
Yeah.
is it's usually been 1 page, or they might say between 800
Yes.
words, roughly around
Yeah.
800 words is probably my experience has been fairly typical. So, do you have any golden nuggets advice regarding what makes a good synopsis? I'm putting on the spot here, but
No, it's
obviously it's
it's
worked for you.
it's
So,
probably my favorite part. Favorite part of being an indie author was never having to write a synopsis. Like, yeah, it was like
I agree.
I'm just gonna stay indie for life now, and I'll never write one of these things again. I struggle with them big time, and the more complicated the book, as you know, the more agonizing it is. Because when they say, don't leave out any twist, don't, you must tell us the ending. You cannot do it for a complicated and layered book. You cannot possibly do that in a page. I don't care who you are or what you say. You can't do it.
Just use a smaller font size.
Yeah, well, it's tempting, isn't it?
Well, yeah, draw the line at a 6.
I actually ended up enlisting the help of a trusted author friend to help me with my synopsis because I could not figure, I'd written it, rewritten it, and I could not figure out what was important and what wasn't anymore. And I was going in circles and just really just couldn't. But sometimes it's easier for someone else who's actually read the book to be able to just give you that second opinion and say, oh, look, that's not really that crucial, or you didn't say this bit, and this is really, So I enlisted some help of a friend, and she took a very big red pen to it, and that helped me enormously to kind of just refine it down to what are the key points. And I can tell you now, the synopsis that I submitted to this agent did not cover everything in the book because it couldn't.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It just didn't. So I just tried to cover, well, what is most important, and tried to also capture some of my writing style in the synopsis as well, which is also hard to do when you're on limited words. So I don't actually think my synopsis that I submitted for this submission was the best synopsis in the world. It's the best I could do. It's not. So I would just suggest every time just enlisting the help of somebody, some fresh eyes on it, because it's really hard. You get so close to your own work, you can't see what's important and what's not anymore.
and you can't make reference to every character in when you're doing a synopsis. That you just have to. And I really struggled with this most recent one that I did because it's told over parallel timelines, so the chapters alternate between past and present, and it's told through multiple points of views, and all those points of views converge at the end. And I found it very difficult to write the synopsis because the way the story unfolded was through these two timelines. I mean, I found a way to do it. I've been rejected. I haven't been picked up yet, but I think it's okay. But
Yeah.
it's certainly the best I could do, and I've done many, many different iterations because I've been kind of drip feeding my submissions. Instead of doing a big blanket approach over 1 week, I thought I'd do one, see if I get feedback, and then I'd rework my synopsis, try something different. And so I
Good
pretty much
idea.
spent most of this year submitting, and I've pretty much exhausted all my inquiries now. I've just about run out of rejections from. There's probably a couple more irons in the fire I'm still waiting on. But yeah, you got to be prepared to play the long game and just continue to tweak those submissions. Can we
Yeah.
now? move into the third component of luck, we've kind of touched on that as well. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on how luck plays into likelihood of getting picked up by an agent?
I think luck's important to always remember because you can have, like we said before, like you can have the best book or you can have the best CV or you can have both of those great things. And you might have just submitted to an agent when they've just signed something, an author with a very similar book, and that's what they're putting their efforts. It doesn't matter what you've said, it doesn't matter how good your book is, they're not going to sign it. So sometimes there's things that are out of your control that happen in this process. And I find that good to keep in mind so that you don't get too disheartened and down on yourself because it might be absolutely nothing you did wrong or could have done better. It was just timing. But I also like to look at it like I was talking about before, instead of just sitting there and going, it's, that author was lucky or this was lucky or I don't have that luck, I'm unlucky. It's about you to some extent you can influence your own luck by working on that author CV, by making sure you're putting your best book forward. All of those things can, help to tip the scale in your favor a bit. So I just think that you hear that a lot of people saying, it's who you know, or they were lucky and that kind of thing. So it's easy to fall into that trap. So staying positive can be difficult, but just remembering that sometimes it's out of your control or sometimes there are more things you can do to enhance that luck is what you should try and focus on.
I think it'd be very difficult to actually determine that agent has actually picked up that author who's got a similar book. You're just not going to know that.
No,
You're
you're
just going to
not.
get a rejection. And
Yeah.
it's like, so you've got to use that as a, I'm pretty sure that must have been because of that, and then move on.
Well, because it's really disheartening and it's difficult, and you need that persistence and determination and that self-belief to keep going because it can be soul crushing, all these rejections. It's just,
Or just go indie.
yeah, or go indie way, but there's not like there's no rejection in indie. Your readers can reject you.
Absolutely, yes. Right. We discussed this slightly in our last podcast, that about the whole sort of let the readers decide. They're
Yep.
going to be the ones that make the decision at the end of the day, rather than publishers making the decision what gets published. It should be the readers, and every book should have the first two chapters or whatever, and then people are going to decide whether they like it or not. But
Absolutely. So no, I'm like I said, I'm very passionate about indie publishing because it was successful for me, and it was it's an amazing kind of process to embark on, and you're running your own business, and you're saying, well, I don't, I believe in me. I believe I can do it, and I believe the readers are going to love this, and when they do, it's a great feeling. So.
And Heidi, what are your thoughts on, we've often spoken about as an author, it's not only the product isn't just the books, you are also the product, your author brand, you are marketing yourself, and people might be more inclined to read your books if they find you're interesting and engaging the way you speak and social media and speaking events and that sort of thing. This is just, it's more of an anecdotal question around what your thoughts are around, say, agents, publishers, agents, if they're looking at all these submissions coming through and they've been inundated with submissions, that if they've got the time to have a look at the author who's submitting, they're looking at their CV. I'm sure my thoughts would be it's probably a combination of, is this a cracker of a manuscript? Is the concept the right time, right place? It's the right manuscript for now, that it stands out, and it's out and it's well written and the concept is brilliant. But they're also going to be thinking about, is this an author I can work with? Are they willing to be proactive? What are your thoughts on, the balance of, are they looking at you as the whole package?
Yeah, they absolutely are. And that, I mean, that might be one of their more sort of secondary steps once they've hooked into your manuscript and they like the idea of it, once they've read your cover letter and they're interested. They are absolutely going to look at your social media. So it's really important to remember just to be professional at all times online. Even if you've never had a book published, that shouldn't stop you from starting up an author Instagram account, Facebook page, whatever it is, TikTok account, whatever you're doing, just start it up and sort of dress for the job you want, not the one you have, that old saying. So, they will absolutely look at you, and an agent is looking to work with someone who they know can market themselves, because it makes their job marketing you so much easier. So it's so important to be that person and to do all of that. And you don't need to have, a dozen books out there to start doing that. You can start doing it immediately and gathering your followers and starting to build those numbers up, so that every time you're doing a submission to an agent, those numbers are a little bit more impressive as you go each time. So they will absolutely have a look at what you're doing online. So always keep that in mind.
It really sounds like your resilience has paid off. I guess we could easily get disheartened after the first 30 rejections, but as you say, you've come at it.
Not that you're bitter at all, no.
Not no, but as you said, Heidi, you've come at it at a different. You started with a small independent publisher, then you co-wrote with another author.
Yep.
Produced a number of books. You've done your own stuff as an indie author, and persisted, built your repertoire, persisted, and I guess your skin gets thicker, and you start to realize I need to do more to position myself, to make myself more attractive to agents, and you start to learn what they're looking for. So it sounds like you've kind of played that long game. My question is, now that you've found an agent, where are you at now? Where are you in terms of your journey? Are they currently actively pitching to publishers? So where are you at?
Yeah, it's still early days because this is only all new news. So and the year is rapidly running out. So I wouldn't expect to have any real publishing news this year. It will be a next year thing. And it is, I think that's one thing that I'm trying to brace myself for, is that indie publishing is really fast, everything's quick. You've written a book in 2 months, you've published it in 3, everything's go, go, go. Whereas traditional publishing is a lot slower than that. So that's something that I need to adjust to and accept and get used to, is that it's going to be a long process. So, I'm just I'm kind of waiting at the moment, I guess, for those next steps, and not trying to expect too much for the near immediate future, as in this year. It's going to be a next year thing. So in the meantime, I'm just working on the next book and getting more words down and moving forward. So I'm never sitting still on that, so that next year will hopefully, anything I can do this year makes my next year easier. So
yeah, I was presuming that you're not going to go and sort of, oh well, I'll sit here and twiddle my thumbs and not. If you've been producing a book every 3 months, it's
I know it's a strange feeling to then suddenly have that kind of, your foot's off the accelerator a little bit. But I'm just sort of pretending it's not. I'm pretending I'm still an indie and I've still got those deadlines and I'm still putting the hours in. And hopefully I do get that deal next year, and hopefully then I've got more time to promote that book, because I will already have the next one pretty much finished and ready to go. So yeah, always trying to keep looking forward on that one. So.
And is this a series, or is this independent books that you're producing?
No, they're standalone. Yeah, they're standalone, but within the same kind of voice and genre. So
Right.
Yeah, a little bit different to what I have been doing. And of course, all my indie books are still out there, and I'm still spending time marketing those and all of that kind of stuff as well. So there's that's still taking time, even though I'm not actively writing in that space at the moment. So
Do you think you will sort of do some indie side writing and on top of what you're doing with respect to the books that you're hoping to get traditionally published?
I think I'm going to have to wait and see, because I don't want to, like, it's really going to be it's a bit of a new world for me. So I need to see how much time that all takes. I mean, my dream is to be able to go and do all those author talks and go to festivals and all those kinds of things. And I'm not really, because I'm a newbie at that side of things, I don't know how much of my time that's going to take up. So
Yeah.
I suppose I just need to get into it before I make too many decisions on that. But because I like being busy and I like keeping busy and working hard, then if I've got the time to do other little side projects, absolutely.
And final question for me before we wrap up: do you feel that you're at a stage now where you're comfortable saying you're a full-time author? And if so, at what point did you get to be able to say I'm now full time? This is what I do.
Yeah, that's sort of a tricky question because I was technically a full-time author who wasn't earning any money for a while. Hours, you know. I guess I started to feel comfortable when my royalties started, or when I was earning enough that it could be considered a wage, right?
Mm.
So um, that's when the comfort level of using that term full-time writer kicked in, is when that took over. And that was really, like I say, in 2020 when the books took off in America and sales went crazy. And at that stage, I was still working for teaching public relations with an online university and doing that at the same time. And then I got to the point where I was earning as much money from my books as I was at the uni. And then the pandemic ended, and suddenly I had to leave the house again, which was bizarre. But I couldn't suddenly do everything. I couldn't fit everything in, and one of those jobs had to go. So I let the uni job go. And I think at that point is when I started to say, yep, I'm a full-time writer.
Yeah.
So, but it's a bit of a lot of people will call themselves that when they're not necessarily earning a full-time income, but that's fine as well. It's a personal thing and a bit subjective as well. So whatever anyone's comfortable with.
Well, we will wrap things up there now. Thanks, Heidi. Thanks so much for sharing your learnings over the years. Sounds like you've been working very hard and been very, very resilient, and it's starting to pay off. So congratulations on securing an agent, and we look forward to seeing where that takes you.
Thank you. So do I. Thank you so much for having me back on the show, because yeah, it's always been a lot of fun talking to you guys. So I've enjoyed it a lot again.
Well, let's
really good.
let's
Thanks very much.
let's secure that appointment now for when you do get your traditional publishing contract and you're a big name. Remember us little people on the way.
Yeah.
And we'll get you back once that happens. I'm sure it will.
I'll do my best to fit you into my schedule.
You'll have to get approval from a publisher.
Yeah, that's right.
Just make sure you keep her email address.
Yes.
That's too funny. No, of course. I'll always be happy to come back.
Terrific.
I might be coming back to talk about the disappointments.
Not at all.
All righty. Thanks again, Heidi. As always, Harry, thanks again. Great chat. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.